This is Hidden Killers Week in Review.
A look back at the most prolific stories of the week.
Welcome to the podcast. If you'd like to listen to an ad-free version of this episode and all of our episodes, then search True Crime Today Premium Plus on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. That's our premium channel where all of our ad-free and advanced episodes live, all in one place. True Crime Today Premium Plus. Search it on Apple Podcasts and press subscribe. Even try it for 3 days free.
The evidence is gone, but the nightmare continues. Welcome to Hidden Killers with Tony Brueski, featuring former prosecutor and defense attorney Eric Faddis.
It's something a lot of people are wondering about right now. Who are these people that are on these videos that are allegedly going to be shown at some point in time? Names going to be dropped. For example, when you have someone like is being described in this one video of the A-lister that was questionable if they were of age at the time that the video was made, that they're very much regretful of this relationship. They just want to move on. And then you hear very similar story coming out of Justin Bieber's people, that it was his younger time. He doesn't want anything to do with this guy anymore. Feels victimized, that sort of stuff. Again, he's never said he was a victim of Diddy. I want to be clear on that, but just clearly wants to move on from his association with him. It sounds like a very similar story. So people are connecting dots, wondering, could it be Justin Bieber over there? Again, not proven, never said it was. Just, we're connecting dots here on what's out there. Could it be? Sure, anybody could be there. But individuals like that who would have been groomed from a very young age, like 14 with Bieber, let's say anybody who could have been in that position, groomed from that young age, they're looking at him like the superstar. This must be how the superstars live. This is how they party. This is how they live their life. And they don't really understand that this is really unhealthy behavior with these things going on. But then they find themselves wrapped up in it, maybe participating in it. Now they're an adult. Now they're much older. They can look back and go, oh, shit, that was really dumb. What sort of culpability are people like that going to be facing if they're in these videos? Is there going to be grace for individuals like that when they can look back and go, yeah, you were virtually a kid, even if maybe you were 18, but this is the life that you were led to believe was okay. What do people like that do right now? Should people like that come forward and go, look, I was groomed, here's what happened, and hope that they're going to get some mercy from the law rather than wait for the law to catch up with them and go, hey, you were doing some shady shit in this video. We got to talk to you. Not saying it's Bieber, not saying he did, but just theoretically someone in that nature.
I think there's going to be a lot of innocent casualties that are occasioned as a result of this Diddy saga. There's going to be a lot of, or at least potentially, names disclosed, high-profile folks who may have just been witnesses. They might not have had any participation that is, uncouth or any criminal liability. They might be victims. And so those folks are still going to potentially have damage to their reputation. I don't know that they need to come forward now. If I were them, I would still probably lay low. And especially if I had no criminal involvement, just hope that this blows over without some substantial impact to careers.
What's your reaction to Diddy saying, I want the names released? He's speaking more specifically, not necessarily on the civil end, but that could very well be an argument as well, so they can prepare their cases. But on the federal and of who are we talking about here? I mean, they do have to prepare a case. They do have a right to defend him. And you can't go against a ghost.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is a legal and a pragmatic consideration to this request. The legal one is that, defense is entitled to confront witnesses against them. They shouldn't have, surprise witnesses at trial the defense wasn't able to investigate. Perhaps one of these accusers has 5 prior charges for false reporting. I don't know that. I'm just using that as a hypothetical, but that's something the defense should be entitled to. Pragmatically, some people are saying the defense is trying to do this in order to put negative pressure on accusers and essentially, make their lives shitty so that they would either, choose not to continue cooperating or defense would gain some advantage. That's at least what some people have been talking about.
If these are the accusers, I guess the question would be, how are their lives going to be shitty? I don't think there's a whole lot of people on the Diddy bandwagon there may be some, I'm sure there probably are, but R. Kelly was a different scenario. There's still a lot of people who are still on R. Kelly's side regardless. I don't really see that thus far in the Diddy side, but time will tell. If you were the victim, I see a lot of people being very sympathetic to that, not necessarily screw you for talking against Diddy. At least that's how I feel on the surface right now. There's always going to be some people out there. I just don't see it being a large group.
Oh, sure. No, and that certainly makes sense. But historically, people have come forward as victims of sex assault are sometimes, drugged through the coals and people look into their backgrounds and their sexual history, even if it has no relationship to the accusation at all. Sometimes it's such an invasion of privacy that these folks feel that pressure and are less inclined to cooperate. And I think that some argue that that's what Diddy's camp wants.
Do they have any choice if their name does get released by the federal government to the defense of Diddy or by the prosecutors to the defense of Diddy? I mean, and does it have to be public I get they have to prepare for a case. That just needs to be. So eventually these names will be released at the very minimum to Diddy's defense. Would it also then be released to the public? Is there any way around it not being released to the public once this all kind of starts coming out?
It's common for the prosecution to seek to retain anonymity for sexual assault victims, especially minors. And so, what could happen is the prosecution could provide the identities to the defense sort of under seal, meaning only the defense gets it. And then the judge may even impose a gag order of sorts saying, hey, defense, you are not allowed to publicly out these accusers in this lawsuit.
Then they just have to hope and pray that nobody leaks it. That would be the other problem, which likely would.
And we've seen some leaks so far.
Yeah. So at some point, I think a lot of these names. What about civilly? When we have these Jane Does here for him trying to defend himself against the Jane and John Does on the civil cases, do those identities have to be revealed so they can properly defend him in a civil case?
On the civil side, that there's a higher likelihood of anonymity because there aren't the same constitutional protections for a civil defendant. Civil defendant doesn't necessarily have or can avail themselves of the full rights of the confrontation clause. And so they don't necessarily get the same degree and detail of information that a criminal defendant would.
So how would the defense of Diddy defend him? Would it just be on the merits of the case itself, and then maybe Diddy would know who it is based on the description of what's going on if the allegations are in fact true? Obviously, if they're not true, he would have no idea what he's talking about.
Yeah, right. That's the concern. I was talking about this with Nancy Grace this morning.
Yeah.
And if like you said, if the allegation is not true, then he wouldn't have any knowledge of some non-event that never took place, and it's pretty hard to prove a negative to defend against that. Whereas if it was someone who was known to him, at least he could say, hey, around this time I was in Washington and I remember some encounter, whatever, but it was consensual. That's a route that he might take as well.
I mean, how would a court look at that versus, I was there? Like, for example, on the criminal side, or actually on the civil side here, we do have one of the John Does that says, here's a picture. It's me and him at the party. So we have that. We know we can place him. He was at the actual event itself. It doesn't necessarily mean anything happened, though. It just means he was at the party by that picture. So how would Diddy defend himself? You have a piece like that where you have some things where you can place the accuser at least there versus one where there's nothing to really place them there. Diddy can simply say, I wasn't there. I don't remember this. I don't know anything about this. Is that just the defense of, I got nothing? I mean, I got nothing defense. I wasn't there.
Potentially, in both the criminal and the civil context, the burden is on the plaintiff. And so the burden is essentially on the accuser in these civil sides to come with the evidence. And then Diddy has to play some defense. He's going to have to see what these allegations are, look at the details, see what can be disproven. He might try to attack the characters of these accusers. There are certain avenues you can take in addition to saying, I've got nothing. I wasn't involved in this, or this didn't happen.
Probably one of the bigger ones I would think would be just location. Was he there at this place at this time? I would imagine someone like Diddy probably has a pretty good log of showing where he was on any given day. Granted, it's coming from his source, so I mean they could mess with the logs, I guess, and change it to where they were. But I suppose more so, I mean, this is a man who's photographed everywhere he goes. There'd probably be some way to prove he was over here. Look, here's pictures of him in Maine or something when somebody's saying something happened in LA. That would probably be one of his best defenses if it exists.
Totally. He kind of has an advantage due to his celebrity status on that issue because his whereabouts have been well documented for decades.
Yeah.
And so he can use that to his advantage. And then also that what they've done too is they've interviewed, the defense has, some of these accusers' acquaintances and people around them and tried to get, dirt on the accusers and even some damaging information about the accusers' credibility. And so certainly Diddy's team is working nonstop to try and field the panoply of different accusations coming at him.
There's just so much every single week. It's yeah. He's got $1 billion now, but I can't imagine that number is going to stay stable for any time soon.
Strap in and get ready to go back in time. Gen X Time Machine is here to transport you back to the glorious days of neon, big hair, and cassette tapes that always needed rewinding.
To figure out where Tupperware went wrong, we kind of got to start at the beginning.
Remember when MTV actually played music videos? Or when lunch wasn't complete without Dunkaroos? Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit like trying to recapture the magic of a bygone era.
Yeah.
We're diving into all that and more. So if you want to relive the 80s and 90s in all their retro glory, hit up Gen X Time Machine wherever you get your podcasts.
VHS is looking like the obvious winner, right?
Oh, and don't forget the rise of the video rental store, remember?
Subscribe, because who doesn't need another excuse to avoid adulting? You're welcome. The Gen X Time Machine.